Yeah, that was Jeremy.
Nikki said she saw it. Okay, I saw it. Yes.
Okay, good. Because when that fully comes out, I hope by that's literally I don't put dates on stuff, but it's coming out very, very, very soon. Sooner than they said at the end of the first book. So it's coming out very soon. Um, and I'm excited. I'm just excited to talk about it with y'all. But okay, we are recording now, and so consciousness is the Father. Consciousness is the Father. And for some people, this is like a insane claim because we live in a day and age we don't want anything to be father, anything that is divine to be a father. But it is when you talk about the divine masculine, you're ultimately talking about consciousness. And so we spoke about and about 4 classes ago how we got the all, and in the all, right, or existence itself, there can't be anything outside of existence because it literally be in oppositions to existence is to be nothing. So there is literally nothing in opposition to existence, which is pretty cool as far as play on words and deep philosophically. But then within that, you have the first original Matrix. Shout out to Nikita coming up in here. You
That's what I was about ready to say.
And so you have the from there you have the first original Matrix, and everything is impartial. Everything comes from it. Even something that wants to destroy the Great Mother is born from the Great Mother. The Great Mother is impartial. Anything that wants to exist, they must come through her, and she allows them to come through. It's a very interesting role. But then from that, you have consciousness, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Comes out of that, and then or emerges from that. And remember, we're speaking causal right now, but that's because that's the way our brains work. None of this is happening within the framework of a time or space. But then from consciousness, you get the abstract. From consciousness in the womb, you get the abstract. From the womb of the abstract, you finally get the highest manifestation of all of those things or of the all. Okay. So, with that being said, we are focusing in and diving deep on consciousness today. And so, the class before, we unpacked the history of materialism, why materialism should not be taken seriously, in my opinion, as a fundamental part of reality. And so now we go deeper. Okay. And yes, last time I forgot to give y'all an assignment, but I will not forget today. Okay. So, and I gave it to y'all in group me, but Jules was still on it. Shout out to Jules. I did catch that. I did read that. All right. So let's go into it. So consciousness is the father. So what is the masculine? Okay. Remember, in the philosophy of order, the masculine is force. Power is the feminine. The highest manifestation of power is the feminine. The highest manifestation of the feminine is power. They're one and the same. And what does it mean to be powerful? To have power. Power is the ability to create great change with little to no effort. Force is the ability to create great change with relatively a high amount of effort. I'm gonna give you all an example. Eventually, science, technology will be able to create a replica of Jeremy, a physical replica of Jeremy. It's going to move like Jeremy, talk like Jeremy, act like Jeremy. The woman, in comparison, Jeremy's mother was able to do that in 9 months, okay, as far as creating what will be Jeremy. Science is using force, biology is using power, and that is the difference. So science technology, there's nothing wrong with that, but it is a masculine, forceful, uh, ability. They're not even using a necessary womb. They're trying to create things piece by piece, force by force, bolt by bolt. And whereas Jeremy's mother just develops him without even thinking a lot about it. And so that is one of the different. So, but to drive the point home even more, you have the egg and the sperm. Some of the easiest to use manifestation of the masculine and feminine. The egg, and many of you heard me talk about this many, many times. The egg sits in the tracks. They both want the same thing. They want to manifest into the physical world. They want to be born. Okay. I shouldn't say physical world, into the outer world. Okay? The egg sits there and attracts. The sperm, on the other hand, has to force and take all the risk. That is femininity and masculinity in a nutshell. This is why men say that a woman is being masculine when she's like, and let's say y'all in the club and she comes up and she's like, yo, I want your number. I'm just going to say it. There's nothing wrong with that necessarily. I'm not saying she's bad, but I'm saying that people will say that's masculine. In the same way that if a man says, man, I'm not approaching no girl. If you want me, you gotta come to me. That's feminine. I'm not saying he's wrong, like, hey, that's how you do it, but that is a feminine way of going about things. And so there's the masculine and it's the feminine. And it's always very interesting seeing how that works. And you got to remember, in every culture, uh, I don't for the children watching, grape is not just wrong, but it's like a deep evil. And one of the reasons because a part of the feminine is that the choice is sacred. Her even the egg decides if the sperm a sperm can reach the egg, and y'all heard me talk about this before, but that does not determine that he will be the one who gets to come in or she, right? It is it is up to the egg. And that is sacred. All right. Um, and evolutionary biology, they call this the reproductive burden. So a man does not have to be as selective. A man can, well, today I guess you really do have to be. Let's say before the internet, before people could track you down, a man could go out and just have the time of his life and impregnate 20 women. I know this is weird in a club, right? And he can go home and they could all just be like, I don't know who that guy was, and he could disappear. But a woman, she cannot go to 20 guys in the club, right? And let them all do that to her and then be able to just be like, well, pff, so long. No, she has what's called the reproductive burden, right? So she has to therefore be a lot more selective, even the act itself. So anyway, masculine, feminine. All right. And so you'll see this not just with humans, you'll see this pop up in plants, you'll see this pop up with insects, you'll see this pop up with planets. This is a constant dynamic of the universe. And so all that to say, consciousness is masculine. So let's go deeper into it. The sun is masculine. Light is masculine. Why? Light is forceful. I know that y'all don't see light. Is that like, how could light be forceful, so delicate? Light is a physical thing. Okay. Light is trying to penetrate other things. If you put something in front of light, I guarantee you light is trying to get through, right? The sun wants to shine on everything. It wants to put its light everywhere. And from that light, and you hear ancient cultures talk about the sun as a masculine, um, even when you see the sun represented as a feminine, it's normally they're talking about the like for example, what's her name? Shepsut. Anyway, that's normally the feminine aspect of the sun. But the act of trying to penetrate light into things to give things life, as we just went over, is interpreted as masculine. So it has to actually attempt, it has to try, it has to seek, it has to go out, right? Unlike the earth is on the receiving side of the light. It receives the light, it receives the radiation, it takes it in. That's why in most mythologies, the earth is seen as a feminine. It is receiving the light, but the light is seeking and going into. Okay, so yes, the sun is masculine. Covered that. And this is a little animation I made. Uh, we can go into this later if anybody has further questions on that. But the sun used to be represented as a light being with a bunch of feminine around him, which also makes him, and I know it sounds weird, but would therefore make the sun also a bit feminine. We won't get into it today, but this is why you'll see some masculine be shown as masculine, but they'll have feminine tendencies. How many people here watch anime? Raise your hand if you ever watched an anime before.
A little bit.
Okay, an anime, there's normally a guy that's very feminine. Okay, not normally, but every now and then, or I would say probably about 6 out of 10 animes, you'll probably see this. But if you notice that character is very powerful, they're very strong, they're normally very pretty, they're very attractive, and sometimes you'll see the sun being portrayed in this way, when it's humanized, when it's anthropomorphized. That's because though it's masculine, having all these feminine entities around you and revolving around you and being so pretty and light is also feminine. So, and they're drawn toward him, and you're drawn toward the light. So it's also very feminine, and it's kind of goes into what we talk about with the Most High. Okay, so now get into Mufasa. Yes, Mufasa, Mufasa, Mufasa. Right. So how many people here have watched The Lion King? All right, all right. Jeremy, what's your favorite part of The Lion King? Oh, he's like, you put me on the spot, man.
Probably just the Timon and Pumbaa part, but
Timon and Pumbaa. Okay, we're gonna cover that. Nikita, what's your favorite part of The Lion King?
The overall story and the ancestors and just the animals coming together.
I like it. I like
On the
it.
spot too. And the Lion King, like my whole family created characters and I was Nala. So
Okay. Oh, that's cool. Tasha, last person. I'm gonna start asking our questions as we go through this. Tasha, what's your favorite part of The Lion King?
When he comes back and he comes into his own, like
Awesome.
he comes back strong and grown.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Okay, so let's break this down. Mufasa, Mufasa, I said Mufasa. Mufasa should be lighter than Scar. A lot of times when I was watching this, there was a conversation in the African American community. They're like, there's colorism going on in this show. They're portraying the light skin, as I say, lions as good, and the dark skinned lions as bad. But this is what we do. We project our own cultural things onto art. It's pretty normal. But that is not what's happening. Mufasa should be lighter than Scar in this message. Does anybody know who Sophie is? Sophie's trying to get in. Does anybody know who Sophie is? I don't know if Sophie's. They didn't hit me up. Sorry, Sophie. Oh, she just got into the philosophy of order. Must be coming over
Yeah,
from.
that doesn't sound familiar. Okay.
Hey, did you read any of the books? Okay, so moving on. Apologies for that. People be trying to get in. I'm gonna make one of y'all in control of the Zoom stuff. But okay, so Mufasa should be lighter than Scar. Okay, so Mufasa represents the spirit of the Great Father. Okay, that's who he represents in the film. He's big, he's strong, he's wise. Okay, he uses force, but not in a way to control, but to allow more freedom. Okay, very similar to what I was describing with the Great Devourer, is that the difference is, like she'll develop things in order to make them more dependent on her. So the lack of freedom, where the Great Mother will develop things so that they can be free. The difference between the Great Father and the Great Tyrant is very similar. The Great Father will develop you so that you can be free. I want you to go out into the world. I want you to see the world. I want you to be the best you can be. I want you to be free. The tyrannical father though, is trying to force you to stay. Michael Jackson's father is the tyrannical father. He did not want his sons to go anywhere. Now, actually, the funny part is this is, and I brought this up before, this is out of love. And people don't like to hear that, but the tyrannical father is acting still out of a place of love. Okay, it's just a twisted, corrupted love. And so Michael Jackson's father, he was abusive. Like, I will not make any bones about it. And he did not want Michael Jackson or his sons to even talk to record labels. He did not even want them to get married. Like somebody was like, "Why don't you want to get married?" Because they're going to try to take you from the family. You got to stay here. That's a tyrant. That's what a tyrant does. Stay here where I can protect you. Now, he was right about the record labels because Michael Jackson was taken advantage of by the record labels, right? But that doesn't make it right to try to stop your son from going out and experiencing the world. So two things can be correct at the same time. The world can be dangerous and terrible, and you still should let your child go out into the world, right? Both those things can be true. So Mufasa represents the spirit of the Great Father. So he's always. It's not that he's trying to stop Simba from being great, but he's like, yo, just take your time. Like, let me show you things. I want you to be free, but let me teach you some things before you go out there. Okay. So that is the Great Father. All right. Scar should be darker than Mufasa. By the way, these are my Studio Ghibli versions. I create AI. I like Studio Ghibli. So you're gonna see most of my things done with Studio Ghibli, like aesthetics. So if you, in case you're wondering why they look like them but different. Okay. So Scar should be darker than Mufasa. Okay. So Scar represents the spirit of the great tyrant. Now, I'm going to go back to Mufasa to talk about this. Every time you see Mufasa, if you're on my live, do not answer. What is in the background? Every time you see Mufasa in The Lion King. Nikita wasn't at the live, Jeremy wasn't, Jules wasn't. Y'all can answer. What do you always notice around Mufasa in the movie?
you say we can or can't answer the ones that wasn't at the
Y'all
live.
can't- no, Nikita, Jeremy, and Jules, y'all can. The rest of them can't because they were at live. They got
Is it the sky?
very close. Yes, but that's not what I'm looking for.
Is there Rafiki? I mean, he's kind of around and
Rafiki.
council.
Though Rafiki does represent wisdom in that story, but no, not Rafiki. There is something that is always present with Mufasa.
Is it Sarabi? Is she
Uh,
present? Zazu. Zazu's there.
It's not a person.
Okay. Let me think.
I'm gonna guess the moon
Very
since
close.
sky was close.
Not it, but it's extremely close.
Or the sun, maybe?
Sun, yes. You will always see the sun when Mufasa speaking because Mufasa is literally a representation of the sun in the movie. The reason why he's lighter like that is not because of colorism. It's because he's supposed to literally represent the sun. If you rewatch Can't Wait to Be King, they literally like kind of show you this. Like Simba has like the leaves on his neck and he's zooming around. He's supposed to be like the sun. They constantly make reference to this, but Mufasa is supposed to be a manifestation of the sun itself. Okay, because the great father is supposed to be a representation of the sun, of light, of consciousness. Okay, and so Scar is also a manifestation of a sun, but a little different. Okay, because remember, the tyrant is still light, but he's a different kind of light. All right. So a shadow, and this is a shadow of, in order for it, if the more light that is casted upon you, and the taller you stand, the greater your shadow. Okay, that is just the way it works. If the sun is having a certain position on you, it's going to cast a very great shadow. Okay, so there's no way to have light without the shadow, right? Um, Technically there is, but well, no, actually, I don't think there is. Anyway, so I mean that's a conversation for another day. But then on top of that, anytime you see Scar, not anytime, well, yeah, anytime you see Scar, you'll either see him in the shadow or you'll see him in the moonlight. And the moonlight is another variation of sunlight. Okay? And so the tyrannical father is not that he doesn't have the light again, his light is being filtered through something else, or his light is being blocked. Now, if you're not conscious of this, and that's where it affects people who are raising their children because they're not aware of that they're not actually casting good light or light at all on their children, though they believe they are. So, Scar thinks that he's good, thinks he's doing a good thing. Okay. All right. So Simba should be lighter than Scar. Now, I'm not going to go out as deep as I went into live on this. I'm just going to tell you that Simba represents the spirit of the weakling prince. The weakling prince is somebody who is supposed to be the king, but he has not accepted it. He rejects it. So in that same way, we're taking the light metaphor out of all this. Someone who has the light, but they refuse to shine. Someone who is supposed to be waking up, but they will not awaken. They refuse, not because they don't know they're supposed to wake up, they refuse to wake up. They don't feel like taking on that responsibility, that burden. Because once you know better, then you'll do better, right? And so some people don't want to do better. It's easier to do worse. It's easier to sink into self-pity, doubt, nothingness, entropy, destruction, than to take responsibility like, man, I do know better. I need to get up, I need to go out, and I need to do something, right? And so you'll see in the movie, he's like, Hakuna Matata, Nala. So what the heck does that mean? It means no worries. It means nothing really matters. But things do matter. And it's okay to take a break, from life, but you can't stay there, is what somebody had to learn. You can't stay there forever. You got to come back. You got to face your responsibilities. Okay, you have to bring the light back. All right. And this goes back to Mufasa saying everything that the light touches, right? Simba is ours because they literally represent the light. And when he left, remember when they come back to Pride Rock, there's no light. If you go back and watch the movie, there's no light because Simba is the light. And Mufasa said, one day the sun will set on my time here, and it will rise with you as the future king. So they use this, not like I'm just saying this. They use this in the film. They're telling you this over and over that this is a metaphor about the sun and the moon, about rising in darkness, about light, about fatherhood, about consciousness. I don't know if they were really thinking about consciousness, but when you start talking about the sun and the moon and fatherhood and stuff, you automatically, because these things are embedded within that. Okay, so he also represents the potential before collapse. So he's in this, if anybody's into quantum physics, and you know what I'm talking about already, okay? That you have this whole like state where everything is possible, and then there's a collapse. I actually don't believe there's ever a collapse. I believe in the multiple world interpretation. There's just a bunch of possibilities, but some people believe that in this state of potentiality, everything's possible, and then when you choose one thing, it collapses. So he's in this state of a superposition, is what they call it. Okay, he's in the state of a superposition. He has to make a decision. Who am I going to be? Okay, who am I going to be? All right. Um, so let's go even deeper. Okay. So the Great Father is the highest manifestation of consciousness. Keep that in mind. Mufasa is consciousness. Okay. And Simba becomes Mufasa by the end of the film, if you didn't notice. That's what happens. When he comes back, Sarabi and Scar call him Mufasa. When he has his enlightenment, Rafiki takes him to the water. He says, matter of fact, he said, I know your father. And Simba's like, oh man, I'm sorry to tell you. He died, he passed. He's like, wrong again. I know your father, right? And he takes him over to the water. He said, I'll show you your father. And he follows him. And Simba's desperately, he wants to find his father, right? He's never faced this and he's never gotten over it. He goes through all this madness, and I have a whole breakdown for that I'll do another time. But he goes through this madness, and he comes to the water. I'm not going to go into the spirituality of water and why you always find water in these scenes, in these spiritual deep scenes. But he's looking down in the water. He says, "Ah, that's just my reflection." And then Rafiki's like, "Look harder." I always loved the way he said that. And then he looks at the water, and it turns into the face of Mufasa, right? And then Mufasa manifests in the clouds, right? And Mufasa, he kind of scolds Simba. He doesn't say, man, I'm so glad to see you. That's not what he says. He said, you have forgotten me. And Simba's response is like, no, no, I could never. But then the deepest line in the whole film, and I love the live action version, they took this line out. I'm like, are y'all crazy? But anyway, the next line he says is, you have forgotten who you are, and therefore you have forgotten me. And this is deep because this is talking about the oneness between the Son and the Father, right? This is really deep. And how if you forget, and you can take this into ancestry, right? If you forget your ancestors, then you don't know who you are. I mean, you can take this so many different directions. All right, let's go deeper. And I know this sounds like a lot, y'all. I hope y'all got time because we're literally just scratching the surface here. This is going to go way deeper than this tonight. So I hope y'all are ready. All right, so Mary is matrix, Jesus is consciousness.
Okay.
Matrix is a medium of structure which you develop in. It is the womb. All right. Mary represents the spirit of the great mother in this story. All right. The spirit of the great mother. Right. But what does this mean? Okay. Let's go deeper. Okay. Mary is matrix. Jesus of Nazareth is consciousness. Yahshua represents the spirit of the great Father. But hold on, Elohim, you just said that she represented the mother. So how is she giving birth to the father? What is happening here? How's this little baby the father? You got to think about the other Mary. These things are very cyclical. Now, anybody can answer, but I did ask this on live, but I'll let anybody answer who wants to answer. Okay. So, Mary is Jesus of Nazareth's mother, but who is also Jesus of Nazareth? I'm going to get into some ancient gossip. Who's also his lover or his wife? This is more ancient gossip.
Like Mary Magdalene?
Mary Magdalene. Yes. I'm getting into some ancient gossip here, y'all. So pardon me. But yes, if you did not know, Jesus of Nazareth and Mary Magdalene were rumored to be, together. Okay. So, and people have taken this in many different ways. Some people believe there's a secret bloodline of Joshua. I mean, people have taken it so many ways. Mary Magdalene is, to the Gnostics, the true teacher and the canon that you get and I mean, you can go so many ways with Mary Magdalene. We're not doing all that tonight. Okay, so just stay with me. We're not going. Mary Magdalene is a very deep conversation in itself. Just talking about, and I mean, people even deem her as a manifestation of wisdom, right? So we're not even going to get into all that. We could, but we're not going to do it tonight. Tonight, we're going to focus on this. It's not a coincidence that Jesus of Nazareth's mother is Mary and his lover is Mary. From the time that the masculine leaves the womb, he is constantly searching to do what?
Get back in.
Get back into the womb. Okay? And so from what he came out, he has to return back into. So he is both the father and the child of the womb at the same time. And I know that gets weird. But just like when we talk about in the cosmology of the philosophy of order, you have the womb, you have consciousness, and then you have another womb. So he's the father of one womb and the child of another, but they're all one. So it's kind of beckoning back to that because he has consciousness and the womb has to give birth to consciousness. There is nothing that can come into being without the matrix. It is not possible. Everything needs a womb. That includes the father. That includes, everything. Okay, so Mary is matrix. Jesus is consciousness. Let's go deeper. Auset means Isis, by the way. Auset is the original name of Isis. Auset represents the spirit of the Great Mother. Okay? This is Heru, though. But what does that mean? So Auset represents the Great Mother. Actually, Heru, if you did not know, every pharaoh born is considered to be a physical incarnation, the highest manifestation of Heru on the planet. If you didn't know, now you know. And so they would say the throne, guess what? Well, I kind of just give it away. But guess what Auset meant? Nikita was muted, but I saw her mouth say it. The
Throne?
throne. Yes. The throne. Auset literally means the throne. She is the matrix she gives birth to the pharaoh, to the king, to Heru. All right? She is the mother. Through her, everything must be, but Heru is also the light. So let's go deeper into this. All right? Heru represents the spirit of the great father. But again, how can Heru be the great father? Doesn't Asar represent the great father? How does Heru also represent the great father? Just to tell you the mythology as quick as possible, Asar is the original lover of Auset. Seth is jealous of his brother Asar. So he seeks to kill him. Okay? Now, Auset and Asar just got married. They didn't get to consummate their marriage. Y'all don't know. Back in the day, you were not married if y'all didn't have a kid. As unfair as that sounds for some people. But if y'all didn't have a kid, y'all weren't married because the whole point is that y'all fused. And once you fuse, you cannot be unfused. So you would have a baby to be like, oh, we're literally married. Back then, it was no like legal law, like, oh, you're married because the law says. No, you have to be married because biology says so. And this is why some women would panic when they weren't able to give their husband a child because technically they are not merged. So this is a whole big thing. back in the past. And they would be so crazy about it, they would allow their husband to marry somebody else and say, she'll give you a child, and that child will be me and yours. So therefore, our marriage is consummated. I know it gets complicated, but the point is, they didn't do this yet. And so when Seth killed Asar, she weeps. She said, our marriage wasn't even consummated. We didn't even have a kid. And she had to actually recover his body because Seth chopped up his body and spread it across the Nile. Not just the Nile, but different parts. But anyway, point is, she brought her back the first mommy. I'm not going to go too deep into the story. And he came to her in a vision. And they came together. And then Haru was born. Okay. All right. So again, think of Simba. So Mufasa's resurrection was through his son returning back as the king. Because the spirit of Mufasa is the rightful king, is consciousness, is the one who watches over, right? That is his spirit. His son possesses that spirit. And so as he comes back, then the king has returned, which is a famous line in Lion King. In that same way, Asar has returned through Haru. The light has returned. The sun set, but now it has risen again. That's where you get set, as in sunset, and Horus, as in the horizon. The sun coming back up. Okay. So Mufasa, Simba, Scar, Asar, Seth, Yashua, Haru, all represent the sun and the light. Mufasa is the light. Simba is the potential light, like right before the sun comes up. That's most of the story. Scar is the setting of the sun, or the sun being blocked by the moon. Right? Asar, Seth, Yashua, I am the light. He is the consciousness. Haru, all represent the sun and the light, and they represent the Father, the consciousness. And that's why you see Yeshua always making reference to the Father. I and the Father are one, blah, 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 blah. Again, we're not going to go too deep down that rabbit hole because that's not the point of this breakdown. Okay. So now we get to go deep. So this, everything I just saw, I know that it doesn't seem like it, but that was all like surface level. All surface level stuff. This is what we went over on the TikTok live. And now we're going to go much, much deeper. Okay. Consciousness, the uncomfortable truth. You don't see reality. All right. Every single day you trust your eyes and ears. But let me tell you, your senses were not built for truth. They were built for one thing only: survival. Am I breaking up? Survival. Evolution proves that what keeps you alive is almost certainly not what's actually real. What do y'all think about that statement before I move forward? I'll let one person comment on that. You said what, Misty?
I'm just thinking about it because I don't know how I feel about that.
Oh,
How
yeah.
can it not be real? You know what I mean? If it's keeping you alive, then it would have to be real,
Mm.
right?
Well,
No?
actually real is the key term, actually. So it's not that what you're interacting with isn't real in some sense, but the core reality of it, we're not evolved to see. And so I'm glad you said that because we're about to go into this right now. Okay, so the ultimate winner, evolution versus truth. We're talking about heavy duty mathematics here, okay? Evolutionary game theory. Anybody ever hear of evolutionary game theory? Raise your hand if you ever heard of evolutionary game theory. Okay, cool. You're going to like it. It takes Darwin's old idea and it makes it mathematically rigorous. So, and the core finding is evolution is only tuned for fitness maximization, having more babies than the next guy. The truth, it simply does not factor in. It's irrelevant. So let me break this down. Evolutionary game theory, all right? So let's say we created points out of the theory of evolution. So one organism, whoever is able to reproduce the most, has more points than the other organism. The organism that's not able to reproduce at all has the least amount of points. They have 0 points. Okay? We call this in evolution fitness payoffs. So, for example, I guess, hold on, let me make sure I'm not going ahead of myself. Yeah, I was going ahead of myself. So the zero probability theorem. So here's the bombshell. The mathematical probability that your senses evolve to see any single aspect of reality truthfully is 0. Okay? Vertical perception. That's the academic term for seeing the truth. Is literally not an evolutionary stable strategy. If you could see reality, you'd go extinct. So let me break this down. What is saying? All the organisms, right, who see what is best for them to see have a better chance of survival than those who are seeing reality for what it is. I'll give you an example. Okay. Let's say that reality is truly let's say 20 dimensions, right? Or let's say reality is truly black, darkness. But you evolve a mechanism and which enables you to see what's around you. So you have one organism that is just purely seeing darkness because that's the only thing that truly exists. But you have another organism that is creating icons to go around and to interact with, enabling them to move better throughout the world. They're going to be able to reproduce and have offspring. The other one is going to die. To make this a little easier to understand, so women, we spoke about this before, are able to see more colors than men. Okay? There are certain creatures that can see higher spectrums of colors than other creatures. A butterfly sees colors we can't even fathom. But what that means is this. That means as they were evolving, one could see those colors, one could not see those colors. The one that could see those colors was able to reproduce and have offspring. The one that wasn't could not. In the same way, when it did the game theory, the evolutionary game theory mathematical sequence, they played it out. They do this all through formulas and numbers. The probability was almost 0 that being adapted to see truth would make you evolve better or more prepared for the world than evolving to see what is best for you to see. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, write down your questions. We're going to get to them. Okay. So, Constance, why truth is a disadvantage? Why? Because truth is expensive. Seeing reality accurately means processing impossible amounts of data, like a supercomputer running millions of calculations. That's slow and it burns calories. Evolution favors adaptive compression, shortcuts. If seeing a simplified, distorted picture helps you run from a predator faster, that useful fiction wins every single time. Do you understand that? Evolution is about what works the best. Evolution is not about what's the truest. It never has been. What works the best? Actually, life has always been about that. Some of you wonder, like, may have wondered when you were religious, why is this terrible person so much more blessed than I am? Why is God helping them so much more than me? Because we look at things like this. I am a person of truth. I am a person of this. Why are they? I'm going to tell y'all right now. Life is about, when we say fittest, I want to be clear. Survival of the fittest does not mean the strongest. I want to be clear with y'all. That's not what it means. And Jeremy actually did a presentation. He talks about this a little bit. Survival of the fittest, and I'm waiting for some more presentations from y'all, by the way. While y'all here, I want to say that. But survival of the fittest is about what fits best within an environment, within a matrix, within an ecosystem. So, in other words, Nikita could be the strongest person in here. It doesn't matter. If we are all more fit, than Nikita, then it doesn't matter how much she can lift and push and pull. You understand? Environments are about the fittest. There was something that happened. I don't want to butcher this story, but there was like a bombing that happened. It was like smug everywhere. And so like the moths and butterflies that evolved to look like the smug, they started evolving and they adapted. And they all looked exactly like the smug, and they would be on the walls, and the birds couldn't eat them. They couldn't see them. So they just kept reproducing. And then we came and we cleaned all the smug, and the birds wiped them out. That's evolution. That's how it goes. The ones who were fit in that environment, they survived, they thrived. But when you erase that smug, well, now they're not so fit anymore. So keep that in mind, okay? So I'm gonna say this again. Why truth is a disadvantage? Why? Because truth is expensive. Seeing reality, I mean, imagine if y'all could see every atom. Imagine if you could see every photon. Imagine if you could truly see every single dimension. Imagine if we could see exactly how joules looks like. Not just the 3D joules, but the 4D joules and the 5D joules. And joules of every possible variation of joules. Do you know how much your brain has to do to perceive all of that? That is super taxing. Evolution's like, bro, let's just see joules for the best joules that we can see for surviving. Let's just go with that joules. We don't need to see every single version of joules that's ever existed in every dimension of him. Can we just see joules that helps us best to survive in the world? And that's the joules we see. And there's obviously more to him because we don't see joules as exactly as he is. We see what's needed for us to survive. Okay? All right, moving forward. I hope that explanation helps y'all. So the math that backs the madness, the key is the fitness payoff function. Think of it as your survival score in a game of life. This function can be literally any shape. It's unconstrained by reality. If the path to a high score doesn't require you to perceive or preserve the structure of the world, why would evolution waste energy building a system that does? Okay? No homomorphism, no truth. Now, that's a very complicated term. I was going to take it out of here because I have a hard time explaining it, but just imagine two sets of separate numbers still corresponding. Best I can explain it for now. Okay. All right. Let's move on. So, all of this comes from, by the way, not all of it, but a lot of this is coming from Donald Hoffman. You all hear me refer to Donald Hoffman a lot. So if you ever want to know more about this, go, you won't regret it. Go and study some Donald Hoffman. Okay. Um, he uh, he goes really deep into this. Okay. So he uses a VR headset analogy. So what are your senses? They're an interface. Imagine a computer desktop. The trash can icon doesn't look like the actual circuits and code inside the machine. It's a simple clickable tool. Your perception is the same. It's an interface theory of perception. It hides a complicated reality, but gives you simple symbols to act efficiently. Just like this computer right here. Y'all are looking at me on Zoom. This is not how it looks. It's a bunch of code like on the Matrix. But you are giving icons so that you can move easier through this interface. And that's how reality actually is as well. Space-time is just an icon. Now let's get super weird, okay? Even space and time, the very fabric of the universe are just interface icons. Okay, we're getting weird. Space and time, just as the icons, just as y'all look at this right here. This is an icon. This is an icon. You're not really seeing what that is. Okay, this TEDx Anchorage book. This is an icon. You're not seeing what this truly is. Time is an icon that consciousness is creating. Space is an icon. The space you see between other things is not actually the way it is. It's just the way that your brain was adapted to perceive it so that you can interact in this world. I want y'all to hold on to that second. When something looks very far, it looks very far. It's not very far. Something looks very close, it's not very close. Okay? It's just the way that your interface. I could put it to you like this. How many people here played Grand Theft Auto? Raise your hand. I played it. Don't be ashamed to say you played Grand Theft Auto. All y'all played Grand Theft Auto. I'm just joking. I'm just messing with y'all. But you have games like Grand Theft Auto, Madden, God of War, NBA games. And there's space. No, there's not. There's no actual space in Grand Theft Auto between you and the car. That's just code. That's just allowing you to interact with the video game. There's not actual space in between you and the car. I mean, there is, I should say. I don't want to confuse y'all. There is, but it doesn't really look like that. So the space between me and Misty, what we're calling space is something else. It's not really something between me and Misty. And this what we call virtual reality allows us to actually peek through that portal that most people couldn't, through space and time. Okay. I mean, because Nikita, aren't you in Cali? Misty, you're somewhere. The light probably still shining over where you're at. Maybe it's not. It is. So we're in two different time zones interacting with each other, talking, speaking. I mean, it's very interesting. So anyway, let me give this to you. So now let's get weird. Even space and time, the very fabric of the universe, are just interface icons. They're not the fundamental structure of the cosmos. Right? They are derivative representations the mind uses to keep things simple. You think of yourself as a small body in a vast universe, it's the other way around. The universe is a tiny data structure in your consciousness. So I'm not saying that space and time isn't real, by the way. I'm saying the way you perceive it isn't real. Space and time actually exist, just not in the way that you think of it. Consciousness creates what you know of as space and time. The abstract. Okay, so why we're all food, even scientists, all right, it's called reification, mistaking the symbol for the real thing. We talk about this in the philosophy of order. Because your interface works so well and is so seamless, you assume the icons, objects, space, time are literal truth. Even scientists make this error. Building entire theories is essentially an intuitive bias, thereby limiting our knowledge. We talked about this in the last class. The map is not the mountain. The map of the mountain is not the mountain itself. It is an icon, is a representation to help you understand the mountain. When you're looking at me, yes, this is a manifestation of my spirit. My body is a part of me. I'm not one of those people who say, I'm not my body. I am. But it's not the entirety of me. It's just an icon. Right? It's not going to give you the full, you're going to be able to know a couple things, right? You are going to, just by looking at me, you look at me, you see my skin complexion, you see my nose shape. So you might even understand some of my ancestry, that my ancestors might come from somewhere that's warmer, right? You might look at my ears. Look, I got long earlobes, right? You know, you could look at me and yes, just by looking at this icon, there are things you're going to know. I have on a short shirt. If you look at it closely, it says sok, which in Muay Thai is elbow. So if you knew that, you understand that apparently he's in a Muay Thai or something like that, right? And so the icon, yes, the icon, we talk about this. I can look at somebody because you are a manifestation of your spirit and I can tell a lot of things about you. 100%. But I still should not confuse that for the core of what you are. So I can see attributes by looking at you, but the core is very much, much deeper. That collection of attributes that make you what you are. All right. This is just an icon to help you understand that core. Okay. So your brain is not the source of you. All right. The idea that your brain produces consciousness is probably wrong. Why? Because the brain is a physical object. A physical object is an icon. So the brain is simply an icon on your interface. It's the avatar, not the user. Consciousness is something much deeper than the squishy thing inside your skull. For example, again, if I'm playing a video game and we open somebody up and we open the person up playing the video game, that's not your body. You're playing the game. It's not you. By the way, your brain doesn't really know the difference. You know, if you keep playing the game, it starts associating, like, you might get hit by a car in the game and get a headache, right? So, and we do this even more in our reality here and now. Okay. So, consciousness, okay? The end of space-time. So, this isn't just philosophy. Physics agrees that space-time is not fundamental. Einstein's own math shows that space and time break down at the impossibly small Planck scale. That's why top physicists are now looking for entirely new mathematical structures outside of space-time to describe reality. The old model is over. So in science right now, we know, and anybody, has anybody watched the Avengers or Marvel movies? So y'all saw them go to the quantum verse and stuff like that. All that fiction is created based on Planck time. What we found out is at a certain level, time and space are gone. They don't make sense anymore. That means that time and space are not fundamental as we thought it was. Things exist outside of space and time. There are creatures that exist outside of space and time, living organisms. Man, I'm so mad I didn't throw them into this presentation. I forgot all about them until just now. I forgot the name. They're little creatures. They're nearly flat. They're so small. And they go in between, they can be so small that they are in a space where there's no space and time. Very interesting. Okay. So the critique of physicalism. This crushes physicalism. We went into this last, but we're going to revisit it a little bit. The idea that only physical matter is real, if the physical world, space-time, brain particles is just a temporary emergent interface, it can't be the fundamental reality. We're basing all of our research on an outdated model of existence. Hold up. Oh, that's my phone. Okay, I thought my laptop was about to go see. Okay, so science's hidden crisis, the end of space-time, I already said that. Wow, I accidentally pasted that 3 times. Okay. I said that already. Apologies. Okay, so Donald Hoffman has something called conscious agents. The network of conscious agents. The deeper reality isn't made of particles. It's made of conscious agents. These aren't vague ghosts. They are precise mathematical structures defined by just 2 things: the experiences they have and the Markovian kernels. That's probabilities, the probability field that govern how their experiences change. Now, he calls these conscious agents. I call these conscious spirits, right? A collection of attributes that make something what it is, that are conscious of being. Okay, that's what I would. I mean, me and him might differ a little bit on the way we define this. So the logic of consciousness, and here's a mathematical breakthrough. He created something called trace logic. This new logic shows how the experience of different observers mesh. It proves there is no single top God, greatest consciousness. Instead, there is an infinite web of conscious agents constantly growing in infinite directions. So, some of y'all are going to think, but I thought you said the Most High is real. I did. But Donald Hoffman's talking about something different. So he's saying there's no top consciousness. This is why I tell people all the time, stop, we got to get out of the habit of saying, I am of a higher consciousness than everybody else. Right? You see a lot of these like spiritual gurus, like if they had y'all on here, they'd be like, we are a higher consciousness and everybody else, they're of low consciousness. We vibrate higher, like, all that ego stuff. But what we find is that consciousness is just different variations. There's no higher consciousness. It's just different kinds of consciousness, all going in infinite directions, creating completely different experiences. Okay? So, this is not idealism. I'm not going to read all that. I'm just going to say, like Donald Hoffman, I actually do think objective things exist out there. So I'm not saying that everything is just mind. I'm not saying that. I'm not even saying that we're in a giant mind. That's idealism. I am saying there are things that exist out there, but you're experiencing what's within consciousness. You're not seeing reality for what it is. And what's creating most of what you're experiencing, seeing is consciousness interacting with each other. Okay? So, who are you really? So, who are you? You are a conscious agent using a cheap four-dimensional space-time avatar. Why? The deepest answer is a guess from Donald Hoffman, not from me. Consciousness is trying to know itself. By the way, he's a scientist. This guy's not just like some spiritual guru. This guy's a neuroscientist. He's a physicist. Um, he's very prominent in his field. And so I love when guys come out like this who aren't afraid to break the mold. Consciousness is trying to know itself by jumping into an infinite number of different time-bound avatars. It experiences and comprehends its own infinite nature, right? Your life is one trivial, beautiful perspective. So let me explain how this connects to spirits and the philosophy of order. So, so most people would say, most people would use what Donald Hoffman is saying because he's agreeing with a lot of Eastern philosophies here. And a lot of Eastern philosophies disagree with me. And, I go this with y'all all the time. They'll say the self is not real. You're fooling yourself. Kind of contradiction. But, the self is not real. I wholeheartedly disagree. Tasha is very real. There is a Tasha. She exists. It's a collection of attributes that we have named Tasha. Okay? Everything has a form. Everything has an essence. Everything has something that makes it what it is. And so what you're experiencing here, you are not your consciousness. That's what's actually happening. This is why consciousness, look at consciousness as something that allows you to experience yourself. So yourself is always going to exist. But without consciousness, you wouldn't be able to experience yourself. It would just be a description or like a character in a novel, right? When I'm reading a Harry Potter novel, in this world, Harry Potter's not experiencing himself. He's just a description of a person. But if he becomes conscious, now he can experience Harry Potter. And so being able to experience yourself enables consciousness to experience you. Hope that helped. Okay. And we're coming towards the very end. So I'm going to use something to explain this called Schooler's framework. Okay. So to get y'all to understand this. Okay. So just listen to this. This is like the last two slides. Schooler's framework argues that consciousness emerges from multiple parallel experiential windows, each associated with distinct neural subsystems. I'm going to explain this. I know I'm using some crazy words here. The apex window corresponds to reportable self-reflective awareness, while subordinate windows support processes like procedural actions, sensory analysis, and spontaneous thought. Attention determines which window rises to the apex at any given moment, creating the feeling of a single stream of consciousness. This model accounts for divided attention, mind wandering, and the coexistence of automatic, deliberate processes within a unified conscious agent. All right. Now, for some of y'all, like, what the heck are you talking about? Remember I told y'all about the split brain experiment? Has anybody heard of the split brain experiment? Raise your hand if you heard about them splitting a brain in half and then those two halves having their own experiences. Okay. I think Nikki's the only one. All right, so what they did was they took a person's brain, they split it, they disconnected it, and then the brains became their own persons. And they begin to interact and answer questions separately from each other. And it was very strange. When I first heard of this, I was very upset, by the way. This destroyed my entire notion of what I believe to be the self. I went through what some people will call ego death. This is very much, I'm not joking. I learned about experiment and I was very affected. And it made me extremely upset. That if you separated my brain, there would be two different consciousnesses going on. I was like, this is awful news. But it's not awful news. It's just a change in perspective. You know, you don't know everything, so you're gonna learn certain things. It's gonna smack you in the face, and you're gonna like, okay, now I have to rethink everything. All right, so what's going on here? Why is this? This is similar to multiple personality disorders. We spoke about this briefly a while ago. When people have multiple personalities, we often think they're faking. You're faking those personalities. You're just acting. Some of them are. Some people do things for attention, but some of them actually are having what's called dissociative personality disorder. So their consciousness is actually separating into different deviations, sometimes for trauma, sometimes to protect themselves. I mean, there's many reasons this happens. But guess what? All of these versions of them are conscious. And when those versions of them are out, they are not awake. When Bruce Banner turns into the Hawk, he's not conscious. The Hawk is aware. Well, he is conscious. And this is going to go into what I'm saying. So this is about there being different windows of consciousness. So I talked about this on my live, but I'm gonna ask again. Has anybody driven home and before you know it, you're home and you're like, how did I get home? Like I was on autopilot. I went through the lights. I don't remember any of that. I don't remember this entire journey home, but I drove home. I was thinking about this. Well, you were conscious when you were driving home. You were just in a different window of consciousness. You were in the window of your thought conscious. So there's different windows of your consciousness that you get to peek through. You get to look through these different windows of consciousness. That's what he's talking about. That's what he's talking about. When people sleepwalk, right? When people, well, let's get into some of them. So this is super important when we talk about the philosophy of order, because you often hear me talk about certain things and this always confuses people. I say your doppelganger is another version of you. If you have a doppelganger on the planet, that is you. That is a manifestation of your spirit in a different place. Twins. Twins hate when I tell them. How do you feel to be around you? Me and my twin friends used to have arguments about this. Stop doing. I was young. I wouldn't do this today. But I used to be like, it's not weird that y'all are literally like the same exact person. We're not the same person. But no, like, y'all literally are though. Like, y'all branched. I was into twins at a very young age. I was into twins in second grade. Okay. And I just thought it was fascinating. And then I found out in middle school, and this is when I started bugging my Jules and Giovanni. I started bothering them because I learned that they started off as one egg that was fertilized, one zygote, and they split into two. I said, yo, y'all are literally the same person. They said, we're not though. I'm like, no, but y'all are. I said, this is cool. And I thought it was the most fascinating, amazing thing in the world. But then they would tell me things. Sometimes they had the same dreams. Sometimes they could feel each other's, when Giovanni one time knew that his brother was crying, he came around the corner to check on him. Brother was crying. He said, I knew he was crying. How'd you know? I just knew. Right? In fact, when they raised twins separately, they actually end up more alike than when they're raised together. And this is obviously because there's an echo going back and forth, causing disruption in itself. in the spirit because they're trying to prove that they're not alike, right? And people are treating them differently, so they're having different experiences. But when you take twins and you put them in different locations, they actually end up marrying the same kind of person. They end up dressing the same. They end up talking alike. It's very strange stuff. But so does their doppelganger. When people meet their doppelgangers, they don't just look similar. They have a similar phenotype and genotype. They have similar parents. They have similar interests, similar lovers. They're the same person. But this also, so I tell people all the time, they're all you. Different timelines, the multiverse. Everybody, people are like, how can there be all these different Nickis? You said there's an infinite amount of Nickis. How can they all be Nikki and all conscious? Nikki's like, I'm conscious right now. How can, one might wonder, how can there be a future self and a past self? How? How can your future, past, and your current self all be existing at the same exact time when I'm conscious right now? Because they're all experiencing different windows of consciousness. They're looking out different windows, just like you were looking out a different window when you were driving home. It doesn't mean that you weren't conscious. You were conscious when you were driving. By the way, the reverse happens. Sometimes you're thinking in your mind when you don't know it. That's how you can talk and have conversations. Like, I don't know how I'm able to keep up with this conversation and talk back and forth. How am I having this conversation, thinking back and forth? How am I having these thoughts? Because another part of you is conscious, taking in information, thinking about it. And the other part of you is talking about what that version of you is thinking about. If I told you right now, right, that your stomach is conscious, most of y'all are going to feel your stomach. If I tell you right now that your tongue is conscious, most of you start doing weird things with your tongue in your mouth. If I told most of you, like, man, you're blinking, you start feeling it. You're like, oh, I'm blinking. You start blinking more than you normally blink. And you start trying to hold it. Like, this is always happening. You're just not experiencing that window. Your cells are conscious. You just don't get to peek through their window and see what they're doing. Maybe, I don't know, some of you might do that. And so when you experience that flow state, I'm a little ahead of myself. I always got to relate back to everyday life. People talk about flow state all the time. All flow state is your higher self saying, take the back seat for a second. Let me drive. That's all that's happening. And you're like, bro, I don't even know. They're like, yo, you have no idea. You just did X, Y, Z, boom, boom. But I don't even remember, man. I don't know how I did all that. Your higher self came in, took the wheel, and then put you back in charge. Said, I got this for you. Let me peek in and help you out real quick. Sometimes your higher self comes when you're about to experience trauma, when you're in an emergency situation. Right? I don't know how I knew what to do, but I just knew what to do and I did it. Because sometimes your higher self will come and be like, I know what to do. There's a cartoon that goes deep into this. It's called Avatar: The Last Airbender. Anytime he's in a bad situation, another version of himself will come in and take over for him. And then he won't even remember what happened. I don't know what happened. Something came over me. So that's what the flow state is. So yes, that's what consciousness is. And our next talk will be on now we'll have discussion, Q&A, comments, disagreements, anything I want to talk about, anything you want to ask me. But the next one will be about the abstract, which is like my second favorite thing to talk about. It won't be as long as this. I know this is a really, really long one, but consciousness is just so, and I still left things out. Consciousness is just so much to go into. It's hard to fit it into one short little lecture. But let me stop recording. First stop share. And Boom, and then let's stop recording. And